Welcome, everyone. Gosh, I am excited to talk to my guest today. I know I always say I'm excited to talk to my guest today, but look at this lineup. Mike Bosworth, author of one of the seminal books on B2B selling, solution selling. Iannarino, who Anthony always makes me feel inadequate anytime I talk to him. How many days in a row have you written a blog now?
13 and a half years.
13 and a half years.
Yeah, maybe 5,000 posts or something like that now.
That he's written a post every single day. But I think the thing that, as I always tell folks when people ask me about Anthony, I always say, well, he is the most thoughtful person in this profession that I know. And part of that comes from, because in fact, he's reflecting or engaging in some form of reflection every single day, writing an article. I mean, if you want to know what you believe in and what you think and how you feel, do this, write every single day, and you will become this thoughtful
I'll tell you, the interesting thing is that you find out that you know things that you didn't know you knew. That's part of the process. You're in your head and you're thinking for an hour. It seems to work.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't written 15,000 or 5,000 days in a row or whatever, but having written some books as you have and all you have, that's a great process of discovery about yourself and the things that you thought you knew and the things that you think you actually do know.
Absolutely.
And Vince has written a book as well, right, Vince?
Well, thinking about it right here. It's right here.
You wrote a book?
I don't know about that. I wouldn't call it a book.
Yeah, all right. Well, we talked about it when you were the first time on my show years ago.
I haven't written a blog post for 13 and a half years. I'll tell you that. That's quite an achievement. You're like the Cal Ripken of blog posting.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
4 o'clock in the morning. No one wants your time. That's when you can get your work done.
Is that when you're writing?
And Andy, hey, I have this distinction. I was at a hockey game until 2 o'clock in the morning. That's pretty good dedication as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, especially for somebody at your advanced age.
Don't I know it?
Yeah. Can't all be young living up in the Orcas Islands, though. So, yeah, I think Mike wins the award in this crowd for living in the most beautiful place of all of us. So,
yeah. Well, did you ever, in 1967, there was a movie out with Richard Harris called Camelot. And I just played that song on YouTube yesterday, and it sounds just like Orcas Island. A law was passed, a distant moon.
Yeah.
July and August can't be too hot.
Yep.
You know.
I just saw the revival on Broadway of Camelot just 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't have Richard Harris in it, but it was still good.
I know. Well, the song really fits Orcas Island. It really does.
All right. So, first question for this group that I have today is, and I see this sentiment all the time on LinkedIn, which is people sort of disparaging this idea of theory or hypotheses. I just want practical advice, right? Don't give me that theory stuff. It's like, or the gurus are going to hate this. I hate it when people lead with that. It's, the gurus are going to hate this. It's like, it's usually written by an influencer who's, would love to be a guru. But I think that when I look at sales and my belief is that we've actually become less proficient in B2B selling over the years than we compared to years past. The data supports that. Win rates drop, quota attainments drop. Don't we need more innovation in sales? Don't we need more theory? Don't we need to, we're in this data-driven age. Why aren't we doing more with the data we have to improve sales effectiveness? Anthony, lead us off.
I'm very concerned about this idea about not having a theory. So that is, to me, the same thing as saying not having a strategy. Like your strategy has to be built on something that you've recognized and something that says there is something that we can do here to have an advantage. So when you start saying something like the gurus are going to hate it, I need practical. Yeah, of course you need practical, but you have to start with something bigger than, I would say, theory. I would say strategy, if you want to call it that. And I think when you look at even Mike's book, like that was a theory that this has to change because buyers changed and now we have to do something different. And when you start saying, I'm going to take that away, you're sort of taking the why. Why do I have to do it this way? Why is this more effective? You have to start that way. And I think anybody who writes what you just described, and I see it all the time, I get it. The gurus are going to hate it. We don't hate it. We don't really even pay attention to that kind of stuff. Nobody
Right.
cares about, let's say, not good thinking, and they want attention. So LinkedIn is just a place to get attention. So I think a lot of it is, I'm going to be as provocative as I can just so I can get attention. Even though a lot of the people, when I look at them, I don't believe that they actually have thought through what they wrote when they put it up.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Go ahead, Mike.
what it says to me is there's a laziness out there. You're either a soldier following somebody else's process, or you're an innovator. And very few B2B salespeople are innovators and thinkers. They're following something that somebody else figured out, and they're soldiers.
Well, most of them are stealing your stuff, by the way, just so you know. A lot of it is they're just trying to rewrite what you already wrote.
If it's stealable, then AI is going to kick their asses.
Vince?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's silly not to have a theory, right? Everyone should have a theory, but as a sales leader, I always looked at, I have an idea, I have a theory, I have a methodology, I have a process, and I want to back up my process or theory by data, right? So at the end of the day, if I'm talking about a subject, it's great to have an opinion, but isn't it better to be backed up by some validation? And what better way to do that than with data, right?
Yeah, well,
right. But that's the senior executive's position, privilege to be able to do that level of thinking. And most field territory B2B salespeople aren't hired to think like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is definitely also a leadership issue for sure. And that gets back to the point I made before, is because, the technical definition of a theory is it's a principle that you form to explain things that you see in data, right? So the data exists. Right. I come up with a theory to try to explain it. Well, we talk about we're in this data-driven age of sales. Look at the freaking data and come up with a theory as to why win rates are so low and why quota attainment's so low and why sales effectiveness is so low. And that seems to be missing. I mean, this is really a leadership issue, more so for me, and more so than just, individual contributors, which I agree, Mike, 100%. They're being forced to conform more than being encouraged to be innovative. But how do we work with leadership to say, look, you've got this data that's telling you a story. Have a theory about why it is.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Oh, absolutely.
I was engaged by a potential client, and they weren't doing very well. They had very large goals. And the senior sales leader, who was never a salesperson himself and had never managed salespeople, asked me to help him get his team to 800% of quota in their pipeline. Okay. 800%. So I've never heard such a thing in my life. Like, I haven't heard it. And I said, so your major strategy is to lose 88% of all your deals. That's the strategy. I'm afraid I'm not the right person for this.
Yeah.
Because all I care about is sales effectiveness. Like, your effectiveness is so low, your plan is to try to lose a whole bunch of deals. That is not how you are successful in sales. You have to get them effective enough that they get to like 40 or 50%, and then you have something to do. But I had to walk away from this, and I'm just like, who thinks like this? Did you think that through? It's 88% waste. Why would you spend your time wasting all of that? It makes no sense to me at all.
And yet, there was this big name, they'll go unnamed, that we all know this person, at least by reputation, but actually know him. Wrote this article, was published on Salesforce's blog, a couple weeks ago, saying your low, the focus now in today's environment for your low win rate sellers, develop more pipeline. I'm like,
they're losing.
They're losing already. What are we going to do? Want them to lose more?
Yes, they need to lose more. And hopefully they'll win something on the way.
The thing that B2B sales forces, certainly in my experience, have always been really bad at, all the way up and down the organization, is really knowing when you lose, why you lost.
Oh, yeah.
And way back when I was a national sales manager at Xerox Computer Services, I got to redesign the loss report. And these were long sales cycle, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sales cycles. And then you have to do a loss report. If it was on your pipeline and it didn't come in, you had to do a loss report. So I put boxes for, price and features and just for the hell of it. I put poor salesmanship as one of the options for the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Never was that box checked at all, ever, by one single salesperson. When salespeople win, they want to be the Lone Ranger, but when they lose, they want fingerprints on the gun. They want somebody to blame. They want to blame their manager or the product or the price or whatever.
Well,
if you can't analyze why you lost, it's really hard to start tweaking.
Yeah. Well, before we jump to you, let me give this fact that comes out of friends that closed that do win-loss analyses. And in their recent study they'd done, they found that when they compare the reason put into Salesforce or whatever CRM for loss to what the buyer said about the same deal, the sellers were right only 15% of the time.
I'm surprised that much.
Go ahead, Anthony.
It can't be me, right? It has to be them.
Yeah.
That is another way to be stunting people's growth and arrested development. Like, you have to just look at it and say, I botched this up. How'd I botch it up? I don't know, but I botched it up. And if you would do that and get just very clear about this, and to Mike, to your point, they're always going to point at something about the buyer. It's like they didn't understand our value proposition. Well, how did they not understand it? You were the one sitting across from them. Yeah, it's always you. And the people who do the best in sales are the ones that would immediately say, I messed this thing up. I didn't handle it right. 2 people came in. I didn't have any notion that they were even going to be here. They had no idea what the hell we were talking about. And I lost. And then I'm not going to do that again. Good. Okay. Now we got somewhere. It's just very hard if you don't believe that you're the source of the loss.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of my favorite stories, and I was filling one of the things you hear and you fill in the details as soon as you hear it. It was the last day of a month. I was on a train. I was going up I was in Penn Station here in New York. I was heading up to Boston, see my daughter, and I was in college at the time. And this young guy in a suit comes rushing onto the train and sits in the seat in front of me and immediately gets on his phone. I could tell he was talking to his boss. And I could tell it wasn't a good conversation. And finally I could hear this guy say, well, the buyers were just liars. And I thought, oh my God, that explains it all right there, right? You can just sort of fill in the what was going on there. Is that wasn't my fault. The buyers were just liars.
In one respect, they are, because most buyers won't tell the salesperson the truth about why they lost. They feel bad. They nurtured a relationship together for 3 or 4 months. The buyer knows that poor salesman's going to have to, go back to the office with his tail between his legs because he didn't win and stuff. And they have some relationship. So the buyers lie too. They say, Andy, I like you the best, but your competition had this one feature that we just couldn't get around and everybody wanted it, but we liked you the best. So it's really hard to find the real human reason, human being to human being, why they didn't buy, because nobody's telling the truth.
They had 5 people competing. 4 of them got that same call.
Yeah.
They're letting you down easy.
They're letting you down easy. So it's not the truth, and the sellers don't want to look at the truth. What if the buyer would have had the guts to say, Anthony, the reason we didn't go with you is your competitor took the time to understand our needs before they gave us a demo. You had your demos out on the first call. You were just throwing your product at us. Your competition helped us understand the true ROI, what the cost is going to be, the training, the implementation. We really feel like we're going into it with a full mind. You didn't do that. They don't have the guts to say to the salesperson, here's why you're really lost.
But to Anthony's point, though, and then Vince will jump to you, is as a seller, I always sort of knew, right? I mean, I was trying to keep my fingers on the pulse of the buyer along the way, taking advantage of that relationship, the connection I had to, you're right. You never know 100%, right? But if you're self-aware to some degree, you have an indication. Certainly, right?
Well, look, I think, let's distinguish. I think best sellers, the top sellers out there are honest about their opportunities and they get to the truth, win and loss, right?
Yep.
I've had salespeople before, every time they win, they say they win because superior salesmanship, right? That's the answer. Ridiculous. And then when they lose, they say it's either product or it's price.
The buyers are
top
liars.
Sellers I've managed or worked with always say the real reasons why they won or lost. They're interested in the truth because why? You can learn from the truth. You can't learn from incorrect information or just what you want to hear. And if I'm a buyer, I agree. If I haven't developed a relationship with the seller, how transparent am I going to be? Like, I don't care. You're the one that called me. You're the one that was interested in me buying your product. I don't owe you anything. So probably I'm going to tell you it was either price or product, just so you leave me alone and stop asking to talk to my boss, right?
Well, so people listening to the show are probably gonna be tired of me giving this particular story, but it was a company in Australia run by Joan and Kean McLaughlin called Trinity Perspectives. They do win-loss analyses. They've done thousands of interviews with decision makers over the last dozen years. And a year ago, Kean sent me slides. He said, we've summarized our findings over these, thousands of interviews over a dozen years into 9 reasons why you win deals and 9 reasons why you lose deals. Not one of the 18 reasons was product or features or price. It was all about the performance of the individual seller. It was about that connection with the seller, the performance of the seller, how they experienced the seller.
Good thing we'll be replacing them with AI bots soon, so we don't even need those human beings involved,
Can we just have
just getting in the
conversation without Chat GPT coming into it? Is there any way to do that now, or is it impossible?
If I've ever seen a profession that the majority were mediocre enough that they could be replaced by AI, it's enterprise selling.
Oh, wow.
Because at best, 15% of them are the type of people we'd all like to have selling for us, and 85% are mediocre or worse.
I have the same experience.
And just don't
people
care.
Who are great, and then everybody else is average or less. It's unfortunate. I think it's still because my theory is sales leaders don't understand sales effectiveness. And so they've turned to technology to try to get better results. And so they're trying to get efficient, as if you can win by being efficient. In fact, I would say you're going to win by being inefficient, spending more time with people. And I keep seeing all these people who want velocity. I want the speed of deal. No, you want to win. Right. You want to win the deal. Like, it doesn't matter how fast you win it. You have to win it. And when you start trying to say, I need you to go faster for these deals because the quarter's ending, you're setting yourself up for a really tough time in the future, in my opinion. I think you have to slow down, do really good work. When you look at LinkedIn, all you see is people trying to do spray and pray, which I thought we got rid of at some point. All they've done is use technology to make it even faster and even more disruptive for buyers who already I've done a bunch of research on emails now. There's 4 billion people on planet Earth that have an email. That's half of us, right?
Yeah.
Every day on planet Earth, there are 293 billion emails sent. That's the number to 4 billion of us. And all you're doing is getting people that get 140 emails every day and process that in 3 minutes. That's 7 hours for you to read and respond to those. No one can do it. And so I believe that salespeople in the future are going to be facing the cold outreach apocalypse because you're not getting an email to anybody. Like, it's deleted on site, right? And then it goes wherever emails go to die. And that's it. And they're waiting for somebody to come back and say, yeah, we'd like to meet with you. I believe that happens 0% of the time.
I 100% agree with you. I never liked the word velocity in sales because I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? Why is that good? Because at the end of the day, we should have momentum. We're building momentum, not velocity. I don't know if you're, do you have continuity? Do you have building a relationship? Are you moving your progression of your opportunity in the right direction? That's what I'm looking for, right? We just don't want dead silence.
I'm stealing the whole thing from you. Thank you. It is. You want momentum, not velocity. And if people would think that way, it's a much better way to think. Are we progressing? Yeah, we are. And it's moving closer. Great.
And why do you have velocity? The word velocity is a problem, but also so is what we started this topic about, was the top of the funnel of like, I need more on the top of the funnel. No, we don't need more on the top of the funnel. We need more of at the bottom of the funnel. That's what we need more of. How do we get that? Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is one of the problems.
Because 100% of 100 is, just come on.
Well, to the point Anthony made before about, too many leads. The stat that came out of the book, Strikingly Different Selling, did a survey of, 4,000 or 5,000 companies around the world. B2B, win rates were 17% on average, right? For deals.
That is unbelievable.
17%.
Listen, I have 2 staffing companies that I still have a role in.
Right.
The one that I grew up in, I have 4 salespeople there, 4 total. We do $50 million a year with 4 salespeople.
Right.
Their win rates are between 85 and 95%.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so if they want to win it, they're going to win it. Right. And then they walk away from anything that we don't like. They just walk away from it. And then in the other one, I have 1 salesperson. It's a startup. And I have 5 million with that one in the startup because the effectiveness level is high. And so this is why I am so laser focused on, if you could just get effective, like if you can teach them, if you can develop them, if you can coach them, if you could go actually work with them and go see how they sell. I'm afraid that people would leave crying after they watched one of their salespeople sell, because it would be hideous, and they would probably need grief counselors on site to help them get back into the car. I mean, it's the only thing that matters is you have to be effective enough to win. And when you see 17, Andy, I didn't know that number. That's shockingly bad. I mean, shockingly bad.
But I mean, in broad swaths of certainly like the tech space and the SaaS world, low 20s, mid 20s win rates. Hey, I was again reading a post from somebody on LinkedIn, again, pretty well known. Actually, this was an executive CRO level guy doing his calculation and talking about, this time when you have somebody following up the leads, it's going to be a top seller with a 25% win rate. It's like, what? Since when did we decide top was 25%? I mean, I think, if you're a top seller, your minimum standard is you win more than you lose. That's
slightly over 50.
Yeah, that's the minimum standard to be considered a top seller. You win more than you lose.
Yeah, but look, I think it's the definition of what is a win rate, right? We're not getting into that. Like we're all talking about a different calculation of win rate. The win rate of opportunities versus opportunities won, I don't really care about that. What I care about is the opportunity that the salesperson said, I'm willing to pursue it. Yes. I want to track it from there on, not
that's what
MQL.
It is.
You said this is worthwhile pursuing.
Yep.
I want to track your success right there. Now, if we're talking about 50%, that sounds realistic to me. But if you're telling me, because
we're measuring it that way. On this show, that's how it's measured, Vince. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about. But
I can tell you in the SaaS world, that's not it. Like the salesperson says, the BDR says, I gave you this opportunity. You're working it. And he says, all right, I'll see what I can do. He accepts it when it's already lost. It was never to be won.
It was never qualified.
That's one of the real problems is, and that's a great point is, acceptance rates are part of the issue, right? It is because people are making the choice to spend some of their time on these opportunities, to Anthony's point, opportunities that they're just never going to win. As opposed to
why is that? Like the sales managers and the sellers are in the same situation. It's not the greatest times to be out there selling certain things. And so I need to justify my existence by the number of opportunities I'm working on. Now that's a cultural problem, right? That should not be what we're measuring to ever.
Right. But why has it become sort of de facto? That's the culture across so much of sales these days.
Lazy leaders. They're just lazy and not thoughtful. I mean, that's what it is. Especially when you get to Silicon Valley. That's just like everything's a transaction, right? And you have to do it as fast as possible, because all we're trying to do is reach into people's wallets and take their money as fast as we can. and then I'm going to flip it, right? And then I'm going to go flip another one, and that's what I'm going to do. I think that's it, is that leadership doesn't understand how this works. And you're right, when you get these MQLs and then they turn into SQLs, doesn't mean anything about that at all. It just means you have somebody wasting time on something. And I would say strategic targets are way better than leads. And I never let anybody do, you're going to give me 60 companies that you're going to pursue, and I'm going to help you pursue them, but I'm not going to look for cold leads that are probably dead before I even see them. Even though 0 time selling says to get there first and fast, right?
But to the right ones, because I said in the book, same in the book, there is you're like the bouncer at the head of the velvet rope, right? You don't sell just to everybody that says they want to sell to you, or they want you to sell to them. You make a choice. Who are you going to sell to? Who's worth your time? And that was in that book as well, because it's otherwise you're just choosing to waste your time, and you're going to end up losing 80% of the time or more. I mean, that's the thing that I always find sort of amazing, is that one of the big keywords you hear out of the Valley and startups is product market fit. It's like, well, you've got this low win rate. So one of two things is that operation here. Either you don't have product market fit with a 25% win rate, or you just suck at selling, or is it both?
Probably both.
Yeah.
It's multifactorial. There's more than one.
Well, so, okay. So Anthony, maybe I know your answer, but we'll start with you on this one. Is if you had sort of one bit of advice for an individual seller, knowing they're in this environment, to start focusing on becoming more effective, and it can be 2 bits of advice, but what would you start with?
I have a theory, so I'm going back to our beginning of this.
Not a theory.
My theory is that the only people that are going to succeed in enterprise level sales in the future are going to be an expert that has authority about understanding the problem well enough and the experience well enough to be able to win those deals. I think these people who are young that are getting in and they've not been trained well, they're using things, just structures and approaches that are not effective in this environment, and they're getting clobbered. I'm going to tell you, I have $5 billion companies that have reached out to me and told me we can get a first meeting and we can't get a second meeting. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
The first call is so bad. But here's the other thing I'll say about this, because we've been talking about pipelines. The CRM rules for most companies are, when you get done with your first meeting, you log the opportunity in your CRM. Dumb idea. They didn't have a second meeting. If they have a second meeting, maybe you have an opportunity. But that first one means nothing, because you're ghosted, and that thing is going to live there. And I saw one pipeline with a senior leader. They were sharing all their pipelines. There was a deal that was over 1,700 days old. They had a sales cycle of 90 days. 90 days is their average cycle. And I looked at that and I said, that deal is going to be going to first grade next year. Like, it's already there. Like, that's the oldest deal I've ever seen. And I said, do you have any that are like getting ready for a driver's license? They're so old. Why are you leaving this in there? And the senior leader's like, are you saying my guys are lying? And I'm like, no, I just think you're all oblivious. Like, to give it 1,700 days, I promise you don't have a deal.
Yeah, well, yeah. And it just shows the level of rigor or lack thereof that,
you want to know the end of the story?
Yeah, go ahead.
I ended up telling the senior leader, you think you have $200 million worth of pipeline and you need to net 60. I had your sales operation leader take out everything over 90 days. Mm-hmm. He had 60 million, not 200. And he had to net 60 million out of 60 million. That was not happening.
Yeah. No.
Not at a 17% win rate.
The problem is, if you remove something from your pipeline, you have to replace it. And we're measuring them by pipeline, and they all hate that. They know they're not picked the phone up. If they walk away from something they could walk away from, they're going to have to prospect, and they hate to prospect.
That's what the eye's for, I guess, now, according to LinkedIn.
Well, but and Vince, I mean, this is something you've been most recent experience with is, your AEs when you're at customer and so on. I mean, what percentage of their opportunities did they have to source themselves versus what flowed through from marketing?
It's this is a topic I was hoping we were going to jump into, which is, when I first started in sales, you did a full cycle sale, right? You created your lists, accounts, people, all that stuff. And it made you a better seller because we go back to we were inefficient. I had to take the time to curate all this stuff. And so as we move forward, we took less and less responsibility away from the AE and said, you're so good, I'm just going to hand you over it's on a silver plate.
Because you're a closer.
You're a closer. So look, I can be persuaded both ways of there's specialty in sales, right? BDRs helping AEs and all that stuff. But we did require a percentage of the AEs to source their own leads. And we did emphasize why that's important to you, to the company, and so on and so forth. So we made it part of your, expectation of your job. And they did a pretty good job. And guess what? The opportunities that they sourced that became real, way higher close rate. Could you
way
imagine
higher
that?
close rate? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that can't be true, Vince. Come on.
Well,
actually having conversations with people and doing the whole thing at full cycle. You think that's an advantage?
Well, imagine this. Like, I'm going to call this account and this person at this account because they fit our exact ICP. So I think my theory is that I might have a better chance of actually having a conversation with them because we've helped people just like them solve the same exact problem. Can you imagine that? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a company had sent me their win rate data recently. I was looking at it, and they sort of bucket into inbound, outbound, and in essence, another category, which is in essence was self-source leads. And in the early days of the company, when they're sort of less mature and before the marketing had really ramped up, their win rates on their self-sourced was 50, 60, 70%.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a much higher quantity of them. It wasn't the lion's share of the business. But then as they became more proficient at top of funnel and inbound and so on, the number of opportunities in the self-source just have dropped almost to nothing, right? It's like, again, we're talking about management using data to inform theories. It's like, we know how to win this type of business and we know how to win it. The self-source leads, we know how to win it. Yeah, probably at a higher ACV. I didn't have that data, but probably higher ACV. And we're certainly winning at a much higher fraction of them. Let's do more of that instead of, let's pour all of our money into, generating inbound leads that we close and win at a 20% rate versus a 60, 70% rate.
And you're just talking about the win rate. You're not even talking about the retention rate of those same opportunities.
Yeah.
So self-sourced, high win rate, self-sourced, high retention rate. Probably.
Well, I don't know.
I completely agree.
It's a theory. Yes, I know.
I have a theory.
Why then there's so much Taylorism in this? Like we're just slicing it into more and more slices as we go along. And I don't understand it because I would want what you just said was really, I think, the thing that if I'm going to take anything away from this, I think it's exactly right. We need full cycle salespeople. We need them to be able to do it from beginning to end. And that is how they get developed. I don't think that if you go to the gym and you're like, I'm just going to do barbell curls with one arm, I don't think that's very helpful. I think you have to do the whole thing. And I think that's an important takeaway for people listening to this. It's not that you can't have different roles, but if you do have BDRs, they ought to be on their way to being a grown-up, full sales cycle person eventually.
Well, Anthony,
when you leave them there, they get hurt.
Your business, you mentioned that you have 4 really successful sales. I assume they're full cycle salespeople, correct?
100%. Yeah.
Right. So
we don't have leads. We already know everybody that we want in that business. We only want multi-million-dollar companies that spend every single year because it's their strategy. That's all we ever look for.
And it's the reason why you don't need to double your sales staff each year and triple it the next year because you know what reality is because you know your market really well.
Yeah. Well, one of them started a deal and I inserted myself into that deal. And we have in 2 meetings, a 3-year deal worth $42 million. That's just their high effectiveness. And that's the only thing I ever cared about is like, how do you
have any openings? I'm looking for an enterprise sales rep job. 10% of 42 million. I can make pretty good living, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we break
states.
this? Yeah, I was gonna say, how do we break this cycle though? Or maybe it's not completely breaking. It's this idea that obsessed that we have to use, our most inexperienced, low cost people to have these opening conversations, which, we can see for a certain level of business that may make sense, but certainly, for more complex enterprise sales, always thought was nuts. How do we break that cycle? Because the data shows that it's failed, right? I mean, I believe that in general, I could make the statement, I know this will probably irritate some people, but the predictable revenue model that people have used generally been a failure.
Absolutely.
So we've been doing it for 20 years now, and it's worked for companies they were going to succeed regardless of the sales model they were using. So how do we break
20 years ago, though, people would open your email.
Is that true? Yeah, absolutely.
Not now, though.
Well, so how are your people prospecting? These guys that are full cycle sellers, what's working for them? The phone.
They pick up the phone and they call people.
Shocking.
And listen, I told...
What a concept.
Yeah. I told one of them...
no one answers, quote unquote, no one answers phone anymore, quote unquote.
Well, it doesn't ring, you don't. But if it does, you're going to do it. One of the reps I said, we're going to have this apocalypse of cold outreach. And I'm afraid what we're going to end up having to do is a real cold call. Now, the real cold call that I had to do, which is walking in the door and asking to speak to the decision maker.
Right.
And she said, oh, I like that a lot better. Because she can walk in and get somebody to talk to her. So she knows that's an advantage, because when she walks in and she starts talking to people, she wins deals. So they're excited by the idea of, wait, if everybody else can't do this and we could walk in. I was taught, and maybe you guys were too, or maybe I'm not the oldest person here because Andy
You're not even close. Not even close, but yes, go ahead.
I had to walk across the street. If I visited a client, I had to go across the street and I had to leave with at least a business card, and then both sides of this. That's how I was taught to sell. So you go to see your client, and then you have to walk into 3 or 4 more places, and you have to ask for a decision maker. And sometimes you get them, and sometimes you get a meeting, and other times the worst thing that happened to me is I happened to be in Century City, and I got to the 11th floor, and that was where the Secret Service were when Reagan was in that building, and they did not appreciate my visit.
They were not amused.
No, they were not. They helped me find my way out.
You know what I picked up on what you were talking about of going store to store or office to office is you were looking for the decision maker. You were looking for the highest authority. And guess what happens when you speak to the highest authority, whether it's face to face or through a phone call, right? You're going to cut to the cut. You're going to find out what their problems are, understand their challenges, and try to come up with a solution with them. They don't have time to waste. So stop using marketing jargon. You're going to walk in bold enough to do that. And people are nicer face to face. They're less likely to turn you away. They're more likely to listen to you. Whereas an email, like you said, delete. And it's typically to a low level person anyway. So the higher you go to have a real conversation, you just increase your chances of actually discovering a real opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, every time you hear it's, read something that people say, oh, it's impossible to get anybody on the phone these days. It's like, they have no understanding of what it used to be like, where everybody had a receptionist. And you're talking to a senior executive, they all had an admin who screened 100% of the phone calls. I mean, you never got through to anybody. And there was no voicemail. As I like to tell people, is how many times, I don't know, Mike, you experienced this, maybe Anthony, you did too, when you're out making cold calls, is literally the admin or the receptionist would write down your name on the pink slip of paper that you had called, and you could hear them tearing it up as you walked out the door. It's like, they can't tear up a voicemail.
Well, I wrote the code on smokestacking cold calling in 1974. We were selling first generation MRP systems. I was 28 years old. And so my marketing people gave me, here are the 237 manufacturing companies in your territory, and they all have a perfect fit for what we have. And so, I'd go walk in. I'm 28. I'd go up to the receptionist and say, hi, my name is Mike Bosworth, and I'm with Xerox Computer Services, and I'd like to see your materials manager. she picks up the phone, calls the materials manager, and says, I've got this guy from Xerox out here who wants to talk to our materials manager. 80% of the time they'd come out because they're back then. If you were a materials manager, 50 years old in a manufacturing plant, the only way you could learn about cool new technology for manufacturing was to see the salespeople from IBM or DEC or whatever. Right. That's how they learned about technology. Well, they don't need salespeople to learn about technology anymore. So 80% of the time, the guy would come out, and then he'd see my age. He's 48, I'm 28, and he'd look at his watch.
Yeah.
Because immediately they think, oh God, now I have to be nice to this person for 5 minutes. So I'd confirm the job title. So you're the materials manager? And he'd say yes. And I'd say, can I share a quick story with you about another materials manager I've been working with less than a mile from here for the last 18 months? Never once did anybody ever turn that story down. And in that 1 minute story, I led him to the emotional conclusion that even though I look young, I understand how hard his job is. And I've helped somebody just like him less than a mile from here. And I'd go meet that person if I want. And then after 60 seconds, I say enough about me, what's going on here? And invariably, they would say, you want to come in and look around. So that story, 1 60-second story, changed their paradigm and got them to open their mind up, or eliminated the discovery resistance that most people have against salespeople.
Hey, Mike, how much training time did you get at Xerox before you went out selling?
Well, it's an unfair question. The people we hired as salespeople, they got 6 weeks of demo school. I got hired right out of college, so I had a year in the help desk, and I had a year out helping people implement the MRP system first. So I could tell real stories where all these other guys go out and say, hey, can I show you a demo of our MRP system?
I think that's the operator's advantage. Like, you already know how everything works. You can talk about any problem they have.
Product expertise. I had solution expertise. Yeah. I could look at a situation and know, oh, this isn't a fit for us, or this is a perfect fit for us. And so it's the real key is developing solution expertise, but that takes a long time because most companies, they have their product marketing people teach the new salespeople the product, and they're teaching product expertise, not solution expertise.
Yes.
Most product marketing people don't know how their customers are successfully using their product to make money or save money, but they tell you all about the product.
But isn't part of the issue?
How can it be different if they go to onboarding and the first thing they do is sit down and say, here's all the information you need to talk about our company and our highly charismatic CEO that everybody loves. And then let me show you our trophy case of all these logos that we've won. And you have to know all these. What do they think they're doing? And then they get to product, and it's like, I once was at a keynote at a kickoff meeting, and the product manager literally said, all you have to do is show them this, it sells itself. And I was like, maybe not. You've got 1,100 salespeople here.
Yeah.
Apparently it doesn't sell itself.
And they're all over 100% of quota. Well, but isn't part of the issue, though, too, these days is that, again, back to the specialization issues, we've completely divorced sellers from the implementation. And they really don't know the product anymore. I mean, they know enough, maybe know enough to sort of gain some interest and perhaps sell it, but they count on, a sales engineer to do the demo, and they count on, CS to do all the implementation. And what do they really know about the solution? What do they really know about the customers and how they're using the product?
They don't. And they weren't trained in it. They're just kind of thrown out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, we talk about full cycle. I mean, I sold, to the construction industry, the first couple of years of my career. Hey, when we sold something, I was in there, right? I wasn't doing, engineering work with the customer, but we were out there.
You got to see the before and after.
Absolutely.
You got to witness how they did business without your product, and then you got to help them use your product to do their job better. And with that knowledge, you're golden.
Right.
But Andy, what's the average time a new SaaS seller gets for training?
90 days.
Yeah, 90 days.
Well, hey,
you start on Monday. The next Monday, I think you're going to start selling.
You're on the phone. Yeah, you're on the phone.
Yeah, but hey, I was out my first day on the job, the first professionals. I was shoved out the door. But yeah, I wasn't selling a complex solution.
And by the way, the sales training is mostly about sales enablement, meaning here's the 50,000 tools I'm expecting you to know and use and record all this stuff.
Here's
not the stories that Mike's talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
I think sales training has been broken for a long time. I was just thinking about how many companies that do 1-day training in their sales kickoff. And then I'm thinking, well, I think there are 12 big pieces of sales that you need to master. So we're going to give them that over the course of 12 years. That should work. So everybody needs negotiation at the same time, right? Everybody needs, and they just pick a theme. And I'm like, why'd you pick that theme? Well, we haven't done that one in a while. Oh, well, that might not be the best way to make that decision, huh? Like, maybe there's a better way where you look at their competencies and determine, like, what do they need to know now? And it's just odd when you get to see these things in real life.
Or do the thing that would shock most people is go ask your customers what they need from your salespeople, right? I mean, as a manager, on the previous podcast, used to ask people, the managers, this all the time. Have you ever talked to your buyers about what they need for salespeople? Because, based on data and what we're seeing is that it's all about their experience. Because, the products they're buying, they all look alike. They all basically all do the same thing. They're all sort of priced the same.
How dare you say that the products aren't all completely unique?
All uniquely different, right?
Yeah, right.
And so it's the experience they have with the salesperson that makes the difference. So what do they need your salesperson to be? Oh, we need to hire.
I had a really smart CRO once. The way he trained his new salespeople is he had a few really good customers. And so he'd say, Andy, I'm getting some new salespeople next week. Can I send him out and interview you on how you use our product? And I'll take you out for a great game of golf or a steak dinner, but help him understand how you use our product in your business.
Right.
And he didn't do demo school. They'd have the salespeople go out and interview happy clients.
Right.
And say, show me how you use it. Well, how did you do it before you had our product? So the salespeople can get that before and after solution picture in their mind. That's what they need.
Mike, that's how I learned to sell. I was selling to the limited Victoria's Secret catalog, big enterprise companies in Columbus. And I would sit down with a senior leader and I would say, how do I need to create value for you guys? What do you need from me? And I asked that question and they would answer it. And I had to say sometimes, help me understand your business. Like, I hear you guys talking, but I don't understand you have a different language than I do. And I need to know these words. And everybody was helpful. They kept it limited. They kept saying throughput all the time. Like, we're looking at throughput. And I'm like, I know what that means, but it's math for you. But what's the math? A guy named Dallas Mulder said, do you want to see the spreadsheet? And I said, yeah, I'd love to see the spreadsheet. And he goes, here's your labor. This is it. And we're dividing it by how much we produce. Okay. Now I know something. About 3 days later, I walked in and I said, what do you guys say throughput numbers at another client? And they're like, you know what throughput is? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do.
Of course I do.
I know like this much, right? I only know a tiny bit, but I know that they care about it. And I asked people over and over again to tell me what I needed to know. It's the fastest way. They know what they want you to do. And if you ask them, they'll tell you.
Right.
Show me how you measure throughput in your business. They'll be happy to show you that.
I know there's this mythology that somehow if you don't show up as, an expert, the CEO or someone has no time for you. And I just remember, to your point, Anthony, early in my career, Mike was 28. I started selling, I was 21. I looked 16 generously, right? And yet I had CEOs and founders give me tons of time because I was doing exactly what you're doing, Anthony. I was showing up. I was sincerely interested in learning. They knew I was there with the good intent to want to be able to help them. And if I asked questions, they would always answer them.
I think I just have to one up you though, because I was cold calling at 15.
Oh, you did? Well, there you go.
A charity. I got 2 deals.
Yeah.
And then I quit because I got a job. I was 15 and I went to a skating rink instead where there are 15-year-old girls. And they said, you're the only person that's ever got a deal and you got 2 deals. You need to come back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's not a possibility.
But that got you on your path to your rock and roll career, though.
Yeah.
That's right. That did.
I don't know if you guys know, but Anthony was, he was a rock and roller. He went to LA to make it big in the music business.
And it turned out
I did not know that. Yeah.
Grunge took our kind of hair metal away. So that was the end of that.
Did they take your hair too?
No, the brain surgery took the hair.
Yeah. Another story.
Drugs will do that. Not the drugs from rock and roll, the drugs that were prescribed.
Prescribed, yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll have you back. We'll talk
legal at the time. Yeah.
Talk about your brain surgery. So we're sort of running out of time, but I wish we had more time. But I know
I think what we have to say is if you're listening to this and you're a sales leader, you really need to think about how you're going to get your team effective. That is the most important thing for them to do. And I think however you do it, whatever you decide to do, I think anything is better than leaving them how we find them right now with a 17% win rate. I think that there's a stakeholder map that we should talk about here. I'll say this. You hurt the rep, you hurt the rep's family, you hurt your clients when you don't have a better salesperson, and you harm your own company. So every single person in that stakeholder map gets harmed because we don't have an effective enough salesperson. And I think that's the first thing that leaders should think about. What am I doing with this individual? Am I helping them? Am I helping their family? Am I helping the client? Am I helping my own company? All of those things are, for me, completely aligned together. And I think that if we don't do something about it, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. I mean, when I talk to sales managers, I had sort of my idea of, what a salesperson's job is. Salesperson's job is to listen to the customer, understand the things that are most important to them, and then help them get that. Well, that's your job as a manager too, right? To your point precisely, Anthony, what's most important to this person, both in terms of their career and their family life and personal life, and then how do you help them achieve that? But it takes some care, it takes some effort. You have to get beyond the numbers and work with this person as a person to be able to help them achieve these things. And I agree. Vince?
I think part of the problem in American industry is we have too many ex-military people running these corporations where it's hierarchical and you do what people do what the person above them tells them to do, and there isn't any room for thinking. They want soldiers.
I'm going to give you a contrary opinion on that, which is in my career, the 2 best managers I ever worked for were ex-military. And what they had been trained is how to enable your people to make decisions, right? Because they knew that the commander always wasn't going to be present when decisions had to be made. And so my experience was the opposite. I worked for guys, Naval Academy, another guy was Air Force Academy, best managers ever, because they treated me as an individual and they encouraged me to think for myself and make decisions for myself.
Well, when I was in the U.S. Army, I didn't get such encouragement. I was taking orders from stupid people, and the happiest day of my life was getting out of the military.
There you go. There you go. All right, Vince, wrap it up for us.
Yeah, on that note, I think my takeaway from today is 2 things. Run sales leaders out there, momentum, not velocity, right? Let's know what the momentum should be from stage to stage or whatever your process is. And don't ever hold an opportunity that's 1,700 days long. That's just ridiculous. The second thing is this whole concept of actually being a topic expert, a product expert, because until you master what you're selling and the solution that you're selling, you shouldn't be out there selling. So take the time, sellers out there, you don't need your management to do it. You can take the initiative to really be a product expert. And that's what's going to build your credibility when you go out to the field. And it's full cycle sale.
It's not that you can't win business until you become that sort of peak expert, but when you show up with, like I said, with intent, you show up in a positive person, you show up somebody that's interested in them, they'll give you the time and they'll help you become that expert for sure. All right, guys, thank you very much. Before we go,
Thanks,
Vin,
Andy.
how can people get hold of you? Vince, start with you.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
There's this thing called LinkedIn. I don't know if you people have heard about that out there, but you can type in Vince Beese. I'm the only Vince Beese on LinkedIn.
All right. Anthony.
TheSalesBlog.com or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where we all are, right?
Yeah.
The Sales Blog. Do you have any new content on that?
Every day.
Every day. And Mr. Bosworth, how can people reach you?
LinkedIn works fine for me. Yep.
All right.
Buy his book.
Yeah. Thank you all for spending the time, and I look forward to having you back on.